Hi, welcome to small groups. Yay, you made it. I hope that tonight has been going great, that the food was phenomenal, and that everybody was bragging on what you brought. Now let me just tell you a little insider scoop. I'm always the one that gets asked to bring drinks. What does that say about my cooking skills? I'm kidding, guys, don't feel bad for me. I have brought food before. Anyway, we hope you've had such a great time. Thank you to all of our host homes for making everybody feel so welcome. And if they haven't, just go hug them as you leave, because that makes everybody feel awkward. Just linger. Tonight we're gonna just continue on in our Life Worth Imitating series. And I love the new church and the dynamics of it. When we think about the new church, I think sometimes we forget about the fact that they didn't have all that we have. They didn't have a Bible to turn to, and they didn't have the past experiences that we glean from because we were looking at their life. They just had Jesus, the life that he lived in front of them, their newfound salvation, and a zeal and desire to tell others about him. So how did they example to us intentional living? And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. Intentional living when it comes to the Word of God. I love this. It's found in Acts 5:42. And they were daily in the temple in every house. They did not cease teaching, which means to impart instruction and explain the things of God, and preaching, or bringing good news, Jesus as the Christ. So they were intentional. Everywhere they went, they were sharing the good news about God. Wow, that says a lot about us, doesn't it? Like, what are we doing to intentionally share Christ in the daily? So we're going to break it down a little bit and talk about that. So we just said earlier, they didn't have the Bible as we do today. So what did they example their life after? Well, that's a good question. They had to example their life after what Jesus lived in front of them. So let's look at Jesus and how he intentionally navigated communication and also connectivity to people. I love the fact that Jesus was available to people. He even said to the lowest of low at that time, which would have been children, "Suffer the little children to come unto me and forbid them not," meaning don't keep them away from me. The second thing is that Jesus was sensitive to people. We see so many times that even someone reaching out to him in a crowd, that he would stop and say, "Who touched me?" or "Who is it?" Or the person that was pushed aside, Jesus would pause, meet their need, and then carry on. He was very intentional and sensitive to people's needs. And then the last thing, he was creative in every one of his connections to people. Don't you love it when people just connect with you in just such a unique way? We have so many great examples of that at our church, and I always love to look at Elder Sister Gaddy when she's talking to people, how she just leans in, she listens, she asks questions, and she's so intentional about making every single person feel seen and heard at our church. And she's just an example of many. So let's just see how Jesus was intentional about connecting to others. When we're talking about being intentional about being a contact or one that brings others to Christ. First of all, start with a question. When meeting people, Jesus over and over would ask them questions. Now, pardon the laugh, but I just find it funny because Jesus is the King of the universe, King of kings and Lord of lords. He knows everything, but yet he would pause and ask the person that he was speaking to a well-intentioned question. One of the women that he talked to was a woman at the well, and he said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" And that's found in John 4:7. We know that Jesus already knew that she would, and he knew the whole story from beginning to end, but he paused to ask her that question, allowing her to be a part of the conversation and really fill in those details. To his disciples, he said, "What would you have me to do to you?" In John 6:67. To the man at the pool, he says, "Do you want to be well?" In John 5:6. And I'm sure the man was like, yes, I want to be well. But there's something about speaking that out. And so Jesus was interested in asking questions when he met people. You and I need to ask questions about other people's lives. How many times have we walked in the door at New Life or at our job and you just go into a monologue with the first person you see without pausing to even ask them a question? And I don't mean the "how are you?" and then waiting for your turn to just vomit out all your facts. I mean a truly well-intentioned question. The second thing is when asking questions, don't be intrusive. This is not the time for you to win the interview award, or you're not making a documentary about that person's life, but sincerely ask questions that are coming across in love and care for that person. The next thing that you need to do is smile and listen with your eyes. Now, even as you're watching this right now, I want you to look at the person next to you and smile, but don't use your eyes. It's kind of like this. Does that come across? Even in a video? It sure does. So we need to always make sure we're really listening and looking at that person. And then the next thing is pray that God would bring things to your mind or connect points to another person. There's something about really walking away from someone and feeling heard and seen, but that happens only when you're really connecting to others. 1 Peter 3:15 says, instead you must worship Christ as Lord of your life, and some ask you about your hope, and as a believer, be ready to explain it. Wow. So pray that God will bring connect points to others so that as a believer, you're ready to connect with them and just explain the good news of God. If you don't have a connection, they're not going to be open to you sharing the things of God. I remember growing up, my dad used to tell my brother and I, you should be able to talk to any person at any time about anything. And as a little girl, I always thought that would be so impossible, but he would tell us, you have to be the one that is the most curious one in every conversation. Always ask questions. And how true is that when we're talking to people, if they're asking questions and they're interested in our life, we begin to open up and even share things with them. And that's a way to connect to others. The next thing is that when you are asking questions of others, really lean into that and listen to what they're saying. Many times as you're listening with the empathy of Christ, the Lord will just start giving you responses and further questions and start ministering through your words. Ask the Lord to sincerely guide that conversation. And then lastly, demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit. We want to always show Him. We want to be intentional about living out joy and intentional about living out peace and long suffering. If we quiz the people at your job, maybe now we'd have to do it through Zoom because some of you might live and work at home, but how many of them would say, oh man, she always shows such love and joy and peace? And this is a hard one, long suffering. Are you long suffering with your neighbors, or are you fighting over the fences? Are you long suffering for those at the Walmart line that are cutting you off, or better yet, the guy that's trying to get into your lane in traffic? Are you demonstrating the fruit of the Spirit? So here's the last thing I want to share with us. 2 Corinthians 5:20 in the NIV says, we are Christ's ambassadors, as though Christ is making His appeal through us. I love that, because growing up, I always thought it would be so neat to be an ambassador. An ambassador is a diplomat that really has the power of the country that they're representing. Many times they can't be arrested in the country they're in, and they can't be held because they are representing that country. They are the face of that country where they live. We are Christ ambassadors. Everywhere that we go, we are representing Him, so that I'm no longer Celinda. I am Celinda representing Christ to the people that I meet. And that is a huge responsibility, but I pray that we all take that on seriously this week and just represent Christ in a way that just brings people to Him. So at my workplace, I'm an ambassador of God. At my neighborhood, I'm an ambassador to God. And at school, I'm an ambassador of Christ. I want to challenge you this week to make sure that you're intentionally living for Christ and also inviting others to the kingdom. I hope you have such a great time of discussion tonight. It has been so good to be with you in your home. And you know what? I love what you've done with the place. It's looking good out there. Bye, guys.